Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com.
So, Facebook, in any other name, what could it potentially be, Steve? It seems a little bit strange that, what are they having, an identity crisis that they don't want to be called Facebook anymore? But this story about them wanting to do some rebranding, I'm sure there's got nothing to do with the fact that, the name's not exactly had a good time recently, and maybe, the old big tobacco approach, just change the name and it'll all be right.
Wow, I think there could be something in that approach by them. Of course, we've seen Google do it when they created Alphabet to cover all their various enterprises. And I think this is Facebook doing that. And, it'll probably be called, MetaBook or Metasocial or something like that for all their social stable.
I think that was the interesting part of this story, was this Metaverse concept that the big Zuck was referring to. And I was reading into a little bit more and listening to a couple of podcasts talking about it, where the idea of creating a digital environment online, which they would obviously have all these apps that you could plug into, a professional social, a personal social, Messenger, WhatsApp, Instagram, and you're like living in this environment, and that potentially is what these tech giants are like sort of going towards. And if you mix in VR and AR and all that sort of thing in terms of experiences, I did hear it referred to potentially as like a Second Life type scenario, but I thought, well, maybe it's not quite that. And I don't know if I'd really want to be going into that sort of environment anyway, but it would seem that that's where things are going, because it's not, like you said, I don't think this is necessarily a Facebook specific thing. I mean, obviously the rebranding is like got a whole side thing about their image, etc., which is obviously amusing, that they think a name change will fix that. But the Metaverse part of it is probably the more significant component of it.
Yes, I think that's absolutely right. Look, from a branding perspective and the negative publicity they're currently getting, you would think that it solves that problem, because then Facebook isn't the key product anymore for the company. It's just a product. And then they can just say to the market, well, we just have a problem with a product, but we're fixing it. More broadly, as you've sort of underlined there, it's really part more of, I think, of, expanding its investments and maintaining, I guess, general support, within the sort of, I guess, commodity commercial markets, where they assume the role of the dominant player in providing metaverse technologies, I guess.
Yeah, frightening when it's coming from the big Zuck anyway, considering where we've been. You wonder though. You would think that they still have a long way to go around their company culture to fix the underlying problems there. More AI, I don't think is going to fix what's broken. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's October, so that's usually the time of the year when there's a ton of new tech news. A lot of products tend to be released. I guess we threw the Facebook thing in there because that just happened to come up, and it's tech anyway. But let's start with the Microsoft Surface Duo 2. Now, this actually did get announced earlier in an earlier event, but it's now starting to come out, and I guess reviewers are getting their hands on it and that sort of thing. I find it an intriguing concept, even like from the first one, although the first one sounded like it was not that great an experience to use, but it sounded like the second one's fixed up a bunch of things. But the thing that sort of struck me was whether or not the concept itself is flawed, just from a design perspective, because there's a couple of barriers in terms of, say, using it as a phone or doing something quickly with it. So in the traditional smartphone form factor, it's quite easy to just flick it open and get to something quickly if you want to do it in under 30 seconds and then get out again. Whereas the Duo 2 and the original Duo had this problem where you have to open it, you have to unlock it. And again, that sounds like first world problems or whatever, but if you think about the efficiency of using the device, it's like adding barriers in there. And unlike the Fold and even the Flip from Samsung, which at least has a screen on the outside to give you meaningful
sort of interaction, quick interaction. The Duo doesn't have it. And coupled with the fact that there's an air gap between the two screens, and when you're trying to use the thing as a single screen, you're getting disappearing pixels in the middle, with text disappearing, etc. I have to wonder if any further iterations of this is actually going to solve the fundamental problem in the design itself, even though it is a really intriguing design.
Look, I'm sold on fold-up phones. A friend let me play with his Samsung Fold the other week. Doesn't mean I'd buy one yet, and I still think they're a couple of generations away. I mean, the Fold's got its own issues, but it's the same effectively as the Duo, but for different reasons. You know, when you fold a phone, it's either going to be too thick, too wide, not connected enough, etc., etc. Now, to use the Samsung Fold, for instance, is a remarkable experience. You start with the skinny front sort of screen, and then it flips and goes to the back, and you've got a laptop in front of you. Amazing. If you want your phone to be long and skinny and as thick as a sandwich, it's perfect. So, I mean, that's the drawback with that. And you've just outlined the issue with the Duo. They're not quite there. They surely will solve this at some point, and then I think we will all have a fold phone. But for now, I just couldn't quite get myself across the line for one in any format.
The other thing to consider too, at least with Microsoft's history in mobile devices, is that they haven't had a really good run trying to get one off the ground and being sort of more broadly adopted. So I can appreciate that they've tried something different here to differentiate themselves from, say, particularly the Samsung devices. But again, they may have to think about it a bit more in terms of getting mainstream adoption for it, particularly at the price points that they seem to be at, which are really high, and not too dissimilar from what the Folds are, which again I think are ridiculously expensive at the moment.
Well, yeah, for a phone that thick and heavy, yeah. I mean, surely you just go for one of the, the larger Pixel or the Apple iPhone Pro.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's a good segue. That's actually a good segue into the Pixel 6 and 6 Pro announcement, release announcement, I should say, that they're now available to pick up. I kind of like what they're trying to do with the design, with the camera bar and the two-tone sort of color system that they've got, and because it's the pure Android experience, if I was going to get an Android phone, I'd probably want to go in that direction purely for the pure Android setup, as opposed to whatever the other manufacturers give with the extra stuff that they throw in there. I mean, they're interesting phones. It's interesting that they've gone with, custom silicon. I wonder where they got that idea from. And also that they've chosen not to go with a small or smallish option. Both of these phones, just the regular Pixel 6 is a huge phone, and the 6 Pro is even bigger. And while I'm sure that they work really well, and the fact that they're getting 5 years of software support apparently, which is unheard of in Android world, they make for an interesting option out there for anyone that obviously doesn't want anything on the Apple side of the fence.
Yeah, look, but I think what Android's missing, all of the Android producers, is that no one makes a phone basically the size of the iPhone 13 that, all of the Android phones are getting bigger and heavier. And they're not even, it's not so much that you even need a mini, you just need a sort of small, large format, and they don't have it. The iPhone 13 is probably the closest thing that fits into that, in that it hasn't expanded its size. And the other thing, I had a look at the Pixel 6s and I thought, fantastic. There's a lot of things to like about them as an Android phone, and I suspect that to use that almost be as effortless as an iPhone. However, they're thicker and heavier, and I find the iPhone 13 heavy enough. I wouldn't be able to lift a Pixel 6.
Absolutely. Don't know what you thought about it, but I thought that the camera bar as opposed to a camera module was an interesting deviation to the design language as well, because it actually won't rock on a table now, because it's nicely balanced. And it's interesting that concept hasn't actually come up before.
Yeah, look, for me, that's one of the few, interesting design features on the new phones. They seem just to be getting larger with better screens and better cameras and better features within the cameras, but not actually any changes to the design or the way we interface with the actual product itself. So for me, this is something that's really interesting.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on to the big one for the week that set the internet on fire. Apple released a $29 microfiber cloth, which is delayed for shipping for 12 weeks. I mean, it took them this long to bring it to us, but what what you gonna do?
I don't know. Will it work with my particular screen protector, or does it only work with basic Apple Glass? I don't know.
Oh, there, you'll have to look into the tech specs on that. Obviously, all kidding aside, the big announcement was the new MacBook Pros that came out, the 14-inch and 16-inch, which all the pro users out there were dying to get, probably since 2016 when they abandoned the ports, etc., in that redesign with the butterfly keyboard. It was fascinating watching that keynote that they gave, because they were trying to sell it as a virtue that they were giving all this stuff back. And even though they took it away in the first place, and look, how great are we? We're giving you a HDMI port. We're giving you an SD card slot. We're giving you power. I'm getting the negative stuff out of the way first, because there's some really interesting stuff going on here. But still, it was a bit. I was watching him going, we got rid of the touch bar, and it's like, we're giving you function keys. And I'm sure some clever person on the internet's going to splice together the 2016 one where they were claiming that the touch bar was the next best thing ever, and then putting it next to what they were saying about returning the function keys, and it's going to be hilarious.
Look, I think the other thing that's hilarious is they're giving all these things back and charging you for them. So it's not like you're getting them for free. I'm yet to see Apple give anything away for free, to be quite honest. But look, remarkable platforms. I was expecting just an update to the 2020 M1, and these aren't really updates. These are just an expansion of the MacBook range. And you're absolutely right. I mean, they've gone from pushing the MacBook towards the AirBook. Now they've just gone back the other way, where it's almost like the olden days where you had the MacBook and MacBook Pro, as very different, items. And now you can see, gee, and when you see the size of those chips and what they cram on them, you realise how serious a MacBook Pro is going to get.
Well, that's the thing. The announcement of the M1 Pro and M1 Max really was quite a surprise, I think. And especially when they started detailing, the performance that they're claiming that is possible. And obviously, you want to wait till you get real world testing and see what actually happens when reviewers and whoever else looks at them. But if they live up to everything that they're saying, they're truly quite incredible. And it kind of makes you. I just walked away from it thinking, unless you're just dedicated to Windows, why are you buying a Windows laptop at this point? They just don't. They're not even in the same league anymore. And yeah, jokes aside, the most expensive one is 9,000 Australian or whatever, which no normal person is going to spend on that. But I think the thing that was interesting is that they have taken care of the pros with this release. I think I know there's a couple of nitpicky things that people aren't happy about, but for the majority of it, I think the pro market was super happy with what they were seeing with these things. But and funny enough, I'm looking at it, and I probably don't need one of them. But in looking at it, there's some interesting upgrades that I were attracted to. Maybe not necessarily totally in the performance realm, but just some of the hardware, some like the Pro XDR display, which sounds pretty impressive. The overall design language is quite nice. It's a nice looking machine, but that's not something that they skimp on. I'm kind of interested in just how some of the extra graphical cores would be put to good use in using the M1, just the MacBook Pro. It's more power than you'd ever need. I have seen a couple of bottlenecks in when you're trying to virtualize things and trying to get and I think it's more on the graphical cores side of things, which explains a lot. I think that's like the M1 architecture on the CPU side is still kind of similar, but they've really gone all out on the graphics cores with these Pros. So it's for me personally, I'm going to sit back and watch like some of the feedback and all that. There's always a bit of I don't know, you want to watch what happens on the first generation of a model to make sure there's nothing wrong with it in the real world. But I might consider it at some later point if I think it makes sense.
Well, you never know. I guess all it'll take is someone out there to show that, you could shop on Amazon with the M1 Max while mining Bitcoin successfully at the same time with those GPUs. So yeah. We'll have to wait and see if that's possible. But, yeah, very impressive machines. And, despite the price, I think with those ports back on, maybe Apple listened to some of our VODs here, with those ports back on, it just makes ease of use so much more functional. And, you can't be a pro and not have an HDMI port.
Well, that's the thing. Like, although I don't really use ports that much anymore, I do have a couple of use cases where it'd be handy to just be able to plug a HDMI cable in, and something as simple as that, is now solved with one of these laptops. The curious thing that I just to wrap it up in terms of the Apple discussion is where they go to from here. They've kind of blown it out of the water on the mobile front. In terms of computing. What really is going to be interesting is their next round when presumably they will focus on the remaining desktops they've got in the line. How much more extra power are they going to flex when they get to those, because they don't have like the form factor constraints. Not that the M1s run hot anyway, and it doesn't sound like they'll run hotter than the regular M1, but they still sound like they won't run as hot as like an Intel chip, trying to browse the web kind of thing. But the desktops sound like they might be really intriguing, and I think everyone was wondering how are they going to replace the top of the line Mac Pro tower, which has traditionally been the most powerful. I think they just made it believable that they could.
Well, you put 4 of those M1 Max chips together in a tower, and I guess you've got something that would just melt the current tower. The current tower would melt trying to keep up. And you're absolutely right. I mean, you think of an iMac, top of the range iMac with X1 Pro in there, and then or Max, and then straight away you can allow that to run much hotter. You can allow it, really unlock every possibility with it. So just, I guess we'll wait and see. But I think we should be ready to be surprised. I guess the next thing is you fit a whole Hollywood studio into a single tower now.
Yeah, exactly.
No need for 100 workstations.
Exactly. All right, Steve, I might wrap it up there. Interesting times. I might just go peruse the Apple website again and see which one of the 100 configurations of the Pro is the most suitable.
I look forward to that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so don't forget our website, SciTechCulture.com. You can get all of our links and content there. You can subscribe to our YouTube and Vimeo channels, our RSS feeds, and watch us on any and all of your devices, and we greatly appreciate your visits to our website. All right, so that's it for this episode. We'll catch you next time.